Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Mark Walsh. So on the show today, Bruno Caverna. So Bruno is involved with the Born to Play Festival, the founder of Formless Arts and Playfight. Very cool videos on YouTube if you want to see what it looks like. It looks fun, looks playful, exactly as it sounds. Looks like my kind of thing. So when I heard about this, I was like, okay, I need to speak to this guy. I've actually got it in my diary to come to one of your events, Bruno, but I'm not sure if I'm going to make it with COVID. But who knows, in the future, almost certainly. So welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here, Mark.
Tell us a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you get interested in the body, Bruno?
Well, in '87, I started practicing Capoeira. I was just a little kid, and I saw kind of a documentary on the TV. I had no friends, have no external stimulus. It was very strong, this inner impulse. And I was fortunate enough to have very supportive parents. And so I started practicing Capoeira. And at the time, Capoeira is not fashionable at all. I was the only child among adults. And it was very good because I felt I was cultivating an authentic impulse. And I was completely unaware at that time that would become the first step in a series of unfolding pathways that now determine the space I find myself.
And where was this? Place the geography for people. Give us a sense of where you were in the world.
Yeah, that was in Rio, in Brazil.
In Rio, que mais ou menos, carioca, huh? Okay, cool. All right. I spent time in Sao Paulo. So, all right, cool. So you started with Capoeira. People might know it as the sort of playful martial art with the musicality, and it's got a very different feel than a lot of other martial arts from my limited exposure to it. Where did you go from there? Like, what else did you study? What did you know? How did your interest develop?
I think my personal trajectory in life, it's been a little bit unusual, even though I was sort of induced to follow a, let's say, more usual path. But even when I was a child, I remember around this time, I was 10 years old, I refused myself to go to the school. I was literally locking myself in the toilet. And my parents, they have to tear the door down in order to drag me forcefully to the school. So I always had this rebel spirit, which was not something coming from a conceptualization. I mean, later on, I was in touch with certain ideas, but I think those ideas was more in alignment with a way of express myself. So even in Capoeira, when I start to get very involved in the business of growing in stronger and improving my skills. When I was 16 years old, I was on top of my physicality, and people usually are very competitive in this time. But I just dropped uniforms. I didn't want to have anything to do with the hierarchy, with the graduation system, belts. And so that's being a little the source where I start to venture myself in this life. So I start teaching in 95. I was invited by a friend of mine to lead a project in a mental hospital. So again, I was not aware how that would end up in the future. But when I look backwards and I see there was the process of deconstructing the most conventional methodologies of Capoeira, So I always had this critical sense. In the beginning, it was a bit more radical. Now I'm growing older. I have a different mind, but I think I always sort of escape from the mainstream, so to speak.
You had a love of play, a love of being a bit of a rebel at heart by the sounds of things, and finding a different value than the one that's presented to us in society by the sounds of things.
No, absolutely. No, I was always interested in human beings. And sometimes when I was seeing situations that didn't appear fair to me, and especially when regarding to fear, freedom restrictions. In Brazil, we live in a country where the social and economic discrepancy it's pretty high. So although I was coming from a more middle, upper class of society, I was always circulating among all layers of social classes. So, and I didn't want to conform myself to one particular category. So I was giving myself the opportunity to explore, to extrapolate the conventions.
It's interesting. I think you're the first teacher we've had on from Brazil. And I spent 6 formative months working in Sao Paulo, in favela, and also working in big business with management training. So I really saw both sides of the society. It's very split, isn't it? Between I was with the richest people eating wonderful food, 5-star hotels. And later on the same day, I'd be in the ghetto kind of thing, and gunshots and the normal, poverty and very different kind of food. And, I remember that discrepancy being quite disturbing to me, because I've been to very poor countries. I've lived in Ethiopia, and I've spent time in very rich countries like Switzerland, but to see them in the same place was kind of upsetting, if I'm honest. It was tough in some ways to see that every day.
It is. It's pretty disturbing. I think when you are born here, it's your point of reference. But I have so many friends from Europe; they are pretty shocked upon arriving here and confronting with this contrast. That, I mean, in São Paulo, you can see that São Paulo still have zones and regions that they're a little bit not mixed up so much. But in Rio, it's Rio is crazy. Everything is interwoven by these favelas, these mountains. So in a way, it's interesting because you learn also how to coexist and share that physical space.
Yeah, and on the beach, everybody meets. On the beach, everybody's there, the different backgrounds. And it's, it's such a beautiful city, Rio, and it does have this interesting juxtaposition. On the one hand, it looks like a pleasure world from Star Trek, these mountains and the sea and beautiful people. And, it's just a wonderful, and then there's also this poverty and this violence, and it's all there in one place, isn't it, as a cocktail?
It's something that we can't process racially. No, it's just the way it is. And sometimes things don't make sense, but it is still there, just before your eyes. It's happening. And I think that's one of the reasons, despite all the criminality and the dangerousness that you find in Rio, is still a place that attracts people from all over, because you feel this aliveness. Talking about playfulness, it's very playful. There are certain things that you can't understand, and even the criminality. I think now the kind of criminality experience in Rio, it's quite different from maybe from the 80s. But there's a sense of romantic criminality, it was used to be a bit more poetic. Someone who's coming to rob you, but if you have a good energetic output, you could get along. You could people would maybe invite you to take a beer. Of course, it's I'm romanticizing a little bit.
No, I've come across this. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a playfulness in the air. I definitely noted the sensuality and sexuality. I definitely noticed that. That was definitely, there's a cliche in there, but there's some truth in it. But playfulness, there's a general sense of kind of the impression I got is because things are a little bit more chaotic and unpredictable there, that ability to be flexible, to be playful. And also it's like how people respond to the hardship through joy and play and community and singing and dancing. Not through, say, the East European way. It's right, life is hard. We've got to be tough. We've got to be warriors. We've got to, toughen up. There's a different response to that hardship of let's have a good time. Let's have a party. And as you say, I've even come across criminal gangs who had a playfulness to them. And they're like, okay, we're going to let you go because you give us a good line. And we like your Corinthians t-shirt. So you think it's fun that you're some white British guy wearing a football t-shirt, so we're going to let you go, And it's like that kind of thing I came across. And I was like, wow, this is really quite different.
To my understanding, to my experience, being born here in Brazil, I left Brazil in 2000, so I have become a tourist in my own country. And that's also interesting to have this perspective as an insider, but now it feels like more of a gringo in my own country.
Right. You start to feel the invisible. Where are you now?
Right now I'm in São Paulo. My mother is here. I'm sort of trying to look after her, but I cannot be in the same flat of hers. It's crazy.
Wow. Okay. Well, I hope she's okay. And I know this COVID's kind of getting bad in Brazil now. And you spent a lot of time in Russia as well, right? So that's quite a point of contrast.
Yeah. In a way, I never want to, as I told you, this kind of unusual traits in my personality. I never identify myself radically as a Brazilian. It's my roots. It's a foundation that gave lots of ground for me to develop my language, my first perception of the world. But I was never too attached to that. So I never had problems actually to spend in those countries that now people feel like, oh, come on, but you're Brazilian. You're like, no, how can you survive in Russia? No. I really love to experience life on a broader scope.
Well, Bruno, I'm not going to ask you which country has the most beautiful women, because that's just not a choice I think anyone should be faced with. That's a tough choice. So we'll move on from that. And I think you have good taste as well. So what other practices? So the Capoeira, what did you bring into that? Like, how did that develop? Let's go back to your practices.
Okay. So every time I start to deviate too much, and please bring me back.
That's cool, man. We're flowing today. We're playing Brazilian football, not German football today.
Okay, that's good. Well, in 93, I was invited to work as an acrobatics in a circus, quite popular circus here in Brazil. And after that time, I started to have a little difficulty to go back to that frame, the capoeira I used to grow up. So in 94, I was at the university studying psychology, but again, I couldn't handle to be under this academic frame. So I dropped out, I quit, and I started to dedicate 100% of my time for dancing. So I started now doing ballet and contemporary dance, modern dance, and I was taking sometimes 8 classes per day. It was really crazy, kind of 12 hours. So, and then start to become so eager to assimilate different perspectives of movement, but mostly towards dance, and of course still carry on with the capoeira. And then it came this opportunity to start sharing with a friend of mine capoeira in a very unusual context, which was this psychiatric hospital in Brazil. And things will start just to flow. Now, as I came across also contact improvisation, and I was also doing some Tai Chi, Qigong that time.
And it was part of your work just looks so much fun. This mixture of contact and dance and capoeira and aikido type things, and it just looks like my idea of a good time, if I'm honest. Like that free form, listening, playful, creative, rather than okay, we've got to do a shape or we've got to achieve an outcome. It just like ultimately for me, that's the only thing that's interesting. I did martial arts for a while and it's great and you learn to be badass and throw people around, and sooner or later though, you get bored of that. It's like, how badass do you need to be unless you've got some weird neurosis, or it's kind of like some insecurity otherwise, it's like, surely what emerges is play, surely.
I mean, especially if you come from Brazil, I think the sense of using martial arts to defend yourself, it's a bit ridiculous here.
With guns, right? It's like, what are you going to do?
Yes, what are you going to do? I think the martial arts that you learn here, it takes place on a different level. I think it has to do more about how you present yourself, how you engage in a potentially dangerous situation. Like how you have a presence of a spirit, like to overcome any threat that comes close to you, and that is much more a psychological game rather than being necessarily physically able to engage in a fight. I'm saying that maybe it's also valuable if you have those skills, but if the situation gets really tricky. So it's, I think the better martial arts is to run away, avoid it. Because if you start to broadcast this aggressive energy, you also attract possibly undesirable outcomes into your space. So, and I think sometimes when people get engaged in martial arts, subconsciously, they're also generating this kind of a field of, bringing bringing troubles into your space. So it depends. I think you have to be very honest, very truthful to see what you really want when you start to get engaged in a practice. What's the goal? And my goal has never been using this to, as a classical form of self-defense. And I think the playfulness of capoeira, for sure, it's a space where I found the room to connect to my most instinctual abilities. Excited to be free of forms. Even though I was a very technical guy and was stripping away this mechanical package, and I think the interplay between having form and welcome the formlessness and have technique, but also break over the technical aspect is valuable. So, but today I think that the whole process has been more distilled in this free form. And still, if you use the form, you use the form within a foundation of having this spontaneity. And I think what was my critical vision towards capoeira, because capoeira, it has this is the essence of capoeira is pure improvisation. So people, they start to develop some mechanical ways of learning capoeira, which is killing like what I regard the essence. So people do, in a way, develop faster at a faster pace, yes, because you can give like the proper steps, the ginga, but people become robots, and people start to lose the sense of individual identity. It's almost like you see someone doing a ginga, you can recognize the group. Okay, this guy comes from this group, this guy comes from that group. And that pasteurization for me was also was hurting my soul, because I was much more interested in exchanging information, but so much so that the information should be integrated in a very individual, authentic expression. And that was being compromised when the whole fashion of capoeira started to bloom in the market.
Great. So you created this Playfight practice. And when I saw it, I was like, cool, this is some stuff I've been doing myself for fun, or this is what I'm doing when the contact improv, the aikido teachers got their back turned and I'm playing with my best friend who I've known for 10 years. I'm like, oh, fuck, let's just do our thing, like this would be what I've been doing. So tell us about what the practice is, why people do it, what they get from it, and like what defines it, what makes it distinct from contact improv or something else.
Well, we've been dealing very often with this question. People see the videos and sometimes they criticize a lot. They say this is just contact improvisation. What is the difference? And even during the events, you have such discussions sometimes. And I think it's very legit that what I'm doing is not contact improvisation, because my background is from capoeira. And for me, the play fight is more extrapolation of the capoeira. Even the name play fight is to honor the space where I come from. It's not a denial of capoeira, but play fight is this kind of vision where we remove a bit further the constraints of capoeira. For sure, the playfulness aspect is a central point, is quite pivotal in the making of that practice. But I also, as I told you, like my first experience was as a let's say teacher or facilitator. It took place in a mental hospital, and my background it has these mixed aspects of have the lightness and these colorful aspects of Brazil, but it's also pretty heavy Brazil. There was also pretty dark sides. And personally, I've been very interested in include the totality, what composes the humanness. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes what you see, the facade of play fight seems to be pure playfulness, but I feel sometimes the playfulness is an access for us to dialogue with aspects maybe that are not very obvious. So I really feel that the practice it has the potential of reflecting each other's shadows in a way, and you do it very respectfully. So so it's fun, but sometimes it's also it can be a painful process to look at ourselves and recognize that maybe the self-image that we project out there are not much in alignment with the body's telling us. So I really like the fact of dealing with an expression that it cannot be self-fooling. You understand? Like with the mind, we can create lots of ideas that you can negotiate it, and try to figure out whether it's true or not. But the body has another vocabulary. There's another terminology.
Yeah. And that's where the fight comes in, right? If it's got this word play fight, it makes sense. It's two parts. So if we think of contact as taking away contact improv comes from aikido, right? So it came from a martial art, totally took out the martial arts element and almost created too much freedom. So there can be this sense of just like, well, if you can do anything, I mean, other than, you don't hurt yourself, if you can do anything, then what orientates it? And then if we do pure martial art, it's like, right, I don't know, Krav Maga, life and death, you've got to kill them first move, then we've lost the play. We've lost the fun and the creativity. So it seems to me there's a balance between those two elements of something which brings reality in, something which pressure tests, something which says, wake up, there's reality here. But equally something that says, yeah, it doesn't really matter, we're free, no one's going to get killed, there's some, this isn't like life or death, we're not in a war. And both of those two sides bring something in, and both of them lose something without the other. That's my sort of thinking of any art. You need the reality testing and you need the space to play, the safety for that.
Absolutely. I'm totally in resonance with what you're saying. I think this label Playfight, it can be conceived on so many levels, and in a more biological or ecosystem way. I think life is naturally a relationship between cooperation and confrontation. So you live in this tension between those two polarities. And what I observe in certain ways to categorize life, if you give an example of martial arts, of course, martial arts, there is a sense of cooperation, but the expectation that you create in your mind upon entering a space is one of confrontation. So you are there assigned to confront each other. You're not you're not going and get engaged in a jiu-jitsu and judo and expecting someone's going to hug you or share weight. It's not part of the framework there. On the other hand, in a dancing context, so we are expecting to be in this safe space. So you're not engaged in a tango and suddenly someone take you down to the ground or give you a punch. There's going to be a violence. So there's some kind of implicit rules in every kind of context. And one of the things I sort of commit myself to do in this practice is to free up the mind from those kind of predetermined implicit rules. So it's beautiful to see that one movement in a certain point of a space and time, it can have the potential to be expressed as a confrontational engagement. But in the next second, it can be transformed and it can be more of a cooperation. And to be in this space that you never know, for me, it's relating to life as it is, at least how I experience my background in Brazil. Because you're constantly in dialogue with this relational process of being cooperation and confrontation, and you cannot know before.
It can switch, kind of like, here's Brazilian. Sorry to interrupt, I'll do it Brazilian style. Like, I was on a date with a girl in Brazil, beautiful woman, as everything you might imagine from when you say Brazilian girl, having drinks, having a good time. I said one thing wrong. She took a glass of beer and smashed it on me. Well, and then 2 hours, and there was a huge shouting match in this bar. 2 hours later, we were making love at hers. And it's like from play to violence to play in the space of a very short period of time. And I remember thinking, fucking hell, this isn't like England. Like England, I kind of know who my friends and enemies are. Like I know this is a dangerous part of town. This is a good part. There was this sense of like anything could happen, which was super alive and made you focus, right? But simultaneously was like kind of a head fuck if you weren't used to those things being in the same cocktail. You know what I mean? Quick break from the interview to tell you about our shop and a deal we've got on there, and also about some events that are coming up. So if you go to Embodied Facilitator /shop and use the code podcast 50 is the code, you can get 50% off anything in the shop. And what have we got on there? How to design training, trauma for facilitators, breath work, leadership, resilience, life purpose. There's a bunch of books, there's a bunch of e-courses, mostly for facilitators, trainers, coaches, yogis, different ebooks. But that code will give you 50% out off anything at all there in the shop. So that could save you, let's say, up to £100, which is about $120. So well worth having that code. Go to embodiedfacilitator.com/shop. Also on that website, you will see embodiedfacilitator.com/events-calendar. Just look under events under the main title. You'll see all the stuff we've got coming up for events. We regularly have free online events. If you're interested in embodiment, we have them on coaching, life purpose, marketing, all trauma, all sorts of things. So have a look at the events page. You can see the different one-day events we've got coming up related to the conference and all kinds of other stuff. Okay, so all of that is on embodiedfacilitator.com. And remember that code there. That code is podcast50 if you want 50% off anything. There you go. A good deal. Back to the interview.
Well, but that for me, it's connected more to reality as it is, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it took a bit of getting used to for a 25-year-old English boy to get his head around this, you know? So it took me a little bit of like, okay, this is different. Let's paint a picture then. So we've gone kind of high level on this, almost philosophical. For those who haven't yet seen some of the videos, and the videos are beautiful, by the way, have very nice production. What are some of the exercises or games? Let's take it right down to the nitty gritty here of what people might do if they came to a workshop.
Well, that's the difficult thing to put in words. But let's say try to make an understandable framework, like how we approach this philosophical aspect, the embodiment of that. And it's a process that hasn't been cleared up all the way. I think it's an ongoing process of understanding now as the picture unfolds. But one thing that's become like an anchor of the practice is the fall. So we exercise the fall and we experience the fall very physically. And yet, the physicality of the fall, it's embedded with this philosophical, existential sense of falling.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take down someone to the ground, it extrapolates a technical means to remove support. What we are aiming is to do that, but at the same time, very respectfully, very tactfully, we are also removing the sense of support, or at least the false sense of support, which I call the resistance. So we really face each other's resistance in this way. And the body is giving all these signals of resistance. So it's ability of the one who is facilitating to read, to capture those resistance. And we go in those points of support and remove it. So you experience the fear of falling. But that fear of falling, it can speak much more than fear of literally falling on the ground. It can speak so much more than this kind of reflex of not wanting, not willing to go to the ground.
Falling's a huge art. I mean, I actually hold a world record for being the number of throws I've been thrown in aikido. I did 3,001 in a day. It was a lot of fun, and I just did nothing. I did nothing but get thrown in aikido for several months as preparation. So I didn't throw anyone. I turned up to class and just got thrown around. For it's quite hard work. It was the fittest I've ever been, actually. Me and my friend Polish Pete did this for our 30th birthdays. And I've always loved the falling side of aikido and the rolling side and the being able to trust the ground because you're not scared of, there's not a distance from it. It's like, okay, I'm just rearranging my body on the ground. And I think this is a really beautiful part of aikido that is also the most useful self-defense skill of aikido as well, is how to fall over. A student of mine came off her motorbike in Thailand just a few days ago, and came away unscathed because of her aikido rolling, you know. But I think there's almost profound lessons in this ability to fall and playing with falling and getting comfortable on the ground. You know what I mean?
Yes, I can relate to that. And what I want to focus actually on the craft that I'm devote my life now. And I had experience of people coming from aikido, and so there has always been this need of people putting things in comparison somehow, which I think it's valid. Because we always need to have points of reference to situate ourselves. But what I can say, like the experience of falling, it tends to be very unusual, because again, it's not what you see through the form, because you can see someone falling very much like people would fall in other ways. But I think the experience you get from that falling, it's I don't want to claim any saying that this is better or worse. Is just different. It's different because the way you treat the approach, a fall, it has other components which usually are not present in other practice.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We have this urge to compare. So naturally, I've done aikido and contact. I see your videos. I think like that. I see through that lens. And it's just what we do as human beings. But equally, it's always a mistake, isn't it, to not approach something fresh as the thing itself. I also saw you playing with sticks as well. It looks like you have some fun with sticks. Maybe you could tell us about that.
Well, I think the sticks is one of my favorite tools. It removes a little bit the personal engagement. So it's still the person who manipulates the stick, but the fact that you have the contact with not through the hand of someone, but just a wooden object, and then I think we tend to be less ego-driven in that relationship, or a bit more responsible to look at how we respond to the situation, or let's say to our faults, as opposed to blame immediately because you are doing this way, you are doing that way. Like, you
the
cannot
stick doesn't care, right? The wood doesn't give a shit. Yeah.
Doesn't give a shit. There's not much like to enter an argument with the stick. It would sound a bit silly. So I think it, in a way, it's a beautiful invitation to be more in an area that needs to be negotiated within the self, rather than potentially be engaged in a discussion or in a quarrel with someone. No, because you're the guy told me to do this, you're not doing that, or I think the stick it can be very revealing in this aspect. So I like very much, and there is a vast array of drills you can get with the stick. So it's beautiful. I think it opens up a lot the space for exploration.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, any other sort of major aspects before we start moving to conclusion that you want to? Obviously, it seems like a big system with a lot there, and it's very hard to talk about these kind of things without experiencing them. But anything you want to? Any other aspects you want to bring in?
I see like the practice is predicated on 3 or 4 pillars. I think the embodiment of no resistance, the falling, the self-honesty, and connectivity. I think connectivity is a very important drive for humans. And so I feel there's an interplay of these elements. Like, as long as we are assuming a stance of resistance, even if it's unconsciously, in fact, we are preventing ourselves to establish a real sense of connectedness with someone. And the way actually one of the ways at least, or at least the Playfight way to access this this space of no resistance is through the fall. So when you start to fall, it's kind of letting go of, of whatever you used to cling onto, into. So the fall, it's very, very, it can be very dreadful, very fearful, but the fall, it also is very liberating. And what happens is a sense of connecting to aspects that usually we sort of don't want to see. So I think this integration allow us to enter in this space towards someone else from completely different perspective, much more honest, much more sincere to the facts of without coming with these barriers and filters. So I think this. I think in the end, the whole practice boils down to the kind of connectivity, which I see it's a very common ground for people, regardless which background they come from. I think there's this yearning for connectivity. That's a space I can relate to whatever practice, but how access that it has a certain particularity which works also very much on the psychological, on emotional, existential aspects that usually you tend to deny, to push out of the picture. I like to include it. I like to not make any kind of therapy or new age stuff. It's not my way, but to really honor the what means to be to be together with our vulnerabilities, with our to have a space we can be in trust that life it's includes aspects that usually sometimes you feel a little bit ashamed. You feel you want to enter the space and feel good about, or you want to have sort of project your self-image. So, and I think it's a space that we cultivate lots of power from this vulnerability that we are giving to each other, and then we do it in a very playful way. And I think with it's not very, very comfortable, this experience, but I think what you get sometimes. And I myself, I have to be the first one to expose myself in that space. I really don't like to play this authoritarian role. So people are expecting you to give a quick fix. I think it's really about and it's a big challenge for my status. Maybe lots of people not respect, because maybe people they want to trust that kind of knowledgeable person who transmits so much security. So I think we are playfully get engaged in the most the basic core of this of existential fabric, so to speak.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, there's so much in that. Could talk for a long time about any one of those subjects. You mentioned non-resistance as well. I think this is just under-discussed. This almost Taoist concept. It doesn't necessarily make much sense. People say, well, what do you mean non-resistance? That sounds like giving up. I think that's kind of an interesting theme to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And we bring our own associations into the space. So what I ask people to be patient in the beginning of the class. It's whatever ideas and concepts you have about the terminology I'm going to present here, but the technology is going to be supported by the experience. So I'm not very interested in discussing the semantics of the words. But of course, you have to use the words, but you use it as a pointer. So when talking about resistance, possibly your understanding of resistance, it doesn't match completely my understanding of resistance. And you have to have a common ground. And the common ground is given by the experience, because when you have the experience and I look at you and then that resonates with me, so you can discard the words. And whatever words you use to describe that experience, I'm fine. I have no problem with that. So it's not so much a conceptual game now, but it's about just using some frameworks in order to introduce you to the experience. And the embodiment is the fundamental ground from which we can navigate it towards a common direction. But if that direction is not aligned in the beginning, you may think that you are heading towards the same place I'm heading, but in fact, you may be going in a completely opposite direction. So I really feel responsible in a way to set up the north, and so that we have to be able to re-signify much of the concepts we bring into the space from whatever background you come from.
Thank you. Now, we need to wrap up fairly soon here, I'm afraid, Bruno. But is the Born to Play festival still on this year in June, or is it cancelled because of COVID, the Tuscany one?
The Born to Play festival, unfortunately, was cancelled. We have to postpone. You're supposed to have 2 events. One in April in Berlin, the urban version. It was supposed to take place during the Easter time, and then you had the summer festival in Tuscany in June, and it's very painful to take this decision, but it's a crazy situation.
It is what it is. I was looking at it in my diary, thinking, I hope it's in July or August. And I just checked ahead of us talking today, and I was like, bugger, it's in June. It's probably cancelled. Yeah. So that's just asking for myself because I was hoping to come, but you'll see me at another one, no doubt. And okay. Where do people find you then? What do they look online?
Well, we have a website. It's a formless-arts.com. So in that platform, you find the other websites, the Liquid Body, Playfight, and Born to Play. So it's a sort of a distributor of websites there.
Yeah.
So you have a page on Facebook, Formless Arts, and also have Instagram, Formless Arts, Playfight Practice. So there's a big variety of options to get in touch.
I'll find you on Instagram now while we're on the line. And by the way, people, do check out those websites. I'm actually going to ask you who your designer is, Bruno, and who your video person is as well, because they really are lovely. And just as, if you want an aesthetic experience, the website and the videos are particularly the videos, some of the best I've seen, actually. So, it's nice to see that aesthetics there as well,
That's great to hear, Mark. And I will tell Marina.
Tell her she's got a job for me if she wants it. So
I will tell her. She'll be very happy.
Very nice. Tell her to get in touch. We've got a budget. And are you coming to the Embodiment Conference? Have you had a formal invite yet? Can I give you one if not?
Sorry.
The Embodiment Conference in October. I'd like to give you I wasn't sure if I'd invited you yet or I was waiting to talk to you, but you are super welcome. We would maybe just tell, we can talk afterwards about the details, but, you're very welcome at the Embodiment Conference. If you want to teach a few 100,000 people online, then we'll happily give you an opportunity. So, okay. And maybe, Bruno, this has been fun. I feel like we're brothers by a different mother. And I imagine we'll have a lot of fun, even more fun in person when we get together at some point in the future, virus allowing, in Russia or Italy or Berlin or somewhere else. So maybe I'm overdue a trip to Brazil as well if you stay there. So, okay. A final message about the body, Bruno, to seal the session.
Well, maybe to relate a little bit to the times where we find ourselves right now. I think the body is being seriously compromised, and I really feel it's in a way the whole slowing down. It has some consequences in the body. On the other hand, we have the opportunity also to refrain from this habit of going from one place to the next, like just to maybe to take time to observe. Since you have to be now confined in one place for really long periods of time, I think it's a great opportunity to get more in close touch with the body and establish this conversational relationship to our bodies, which maybe some people they do have, but other people maybe are was just going over that. And I think it's a precious opportunity for us to reevaluate so much the relationships that we tend to overlook to the body, and give maybe space, give a little bit of room for these needs also to come out. It doesn't need to be very impulsive, but I think it's a process of cultivation that can be flourishing now in these challenging times.
Bruno, muito obrigado. Legal. And super cool, man. Super cool. So nice. I've got to run right now. So really good to talk to you, man. A real pleasure. Yes. chat. I've sent you some messages on Facebook about the conference, so hopefully we'll chat again. Take care, mate. Okay.
I appreciate that.
Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/Embodiment Podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So yeah, please go there. On the embodiedfacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. If you're, most people I think listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodiedfacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment Podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on embodiedfacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy. And of course, there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator Course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you. Until next time, welcome home to the body.